Kamala Harris has chosen Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, to be her running mate. And I have one word for the Donald Trump JD Vance ticket. Checkmate. Let's dive in. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Nerd Avengers. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for joining us today. I have a quick snapshot of what all of the Nerd Avengers looked like as soon as we heard about Vice President Kamala Harris's choice to be VP. Look at us. It made us young. It made us happy. So that, my friends, is a picture of our next vice president, Tim Walz, who, by the way, loves both animals and human children. Woo! I mean, come on. Norm, first of all, it's so wonderful to see your face. It's been way too long, but you've had an amazing summer. I'd love to talk about that later in the show. But first, I would love to hear what you think, not just of Vice President Harris's pick, although I do want to hear about that, but how you think it potentially shifts the race and how it may complicate things for Donald Trump and JD Vance.
As a proud Minnesotan and somebody who's known Tim Walz since he first came to the House, I think it's a terrific pick. Having said that, I would have supported a potted plant. I would have supported Toonces, the cat from SNL.
Oh, totally.
But it's what's remarkable about this is that you look at all of these.
I just give Norm credit for Toonces. That is a old school reference. Deep cut.
Deep cut.
If you look at the possibilities, the ones that she had on her short list and then her short list, and then you think about the other talent that wasn't there, from the governor of Maryland to senators like Chris Murphy and Brian Schatz, to governors and House members, Jamie Raskin, Mitch Landrieu. The talent pool on the Democratic side is very deep. There is no talent pool on the Republican side anymore. The ones that would have provided that talent have fled. But I like this pick for a couple of reasons. One is that I view Tim Walz as kind of a slightly more refined John Fetterman. And if you think of the appeal that Fetterman has had in Pennsylvania, somebody who came at a lot of issues from way over on the left, others not quite, but he made this appeal because he's like one of them, one of us. He is a blue collar guy. He can appeal to blue collar people. He doesn't look or act like a politician. There is nothing slick about Tim Walz. And while he has policies that were extremely progressive, enacted in Minnesota, they had this rare opportunity. It was the first time in a very long time that they had the trifecta, bare majorities in the House and Senate and the governor. And they pushed through sweeping legislation, free college for poorer people in Minnesota who, reach the B average. Free breakfast and lunch for all kids. Once you start to discriminate, and as we talk later about my own debate camp, we've had that challenge. It's free for everybody. We have some kids who could well afford it, but you don't want to create two classes. And if you think about that, we know you'll be attacked as some leftist, but we also know that these are wildly popular policies across the board, and he does not shrink from them. And he can speak bluntly and plainly. And then you look at his resume, a high school teacher, somebody with almost 30 years in the National Guard, somebody who taught in China and speaks Chinese, somebody who won election in a red district against a fairly popular Republican member of Congress, and what he's done as governor, and the appeal that he's going to have beyond Minnesota, and the fact that he will just destroy J.D. Vance. Tim Walz comes from that distressed blue-collar background. He is genuine in that. J.D. Vance is a charlatan. So I would have been happy with any of the others, but I think this is a really good choice. And just one other thing, which is the Lieutenant Governor of Minnesota, Peggy Flanagan, who comes from my own suburb of St. Louis Park, is Native American. We are now going to have Deb Haaland, the Interior Secretary, and God willing, if we waltz to victory here in November, we will have a woman who is a Native American as the governor of a good-sized state. This is the first time that Native Americans, the original Americans, oppressed for centuries, not deeply involved in the political arena, are going to actually be showing some muscle and showing that they can prevail in a larger sense. And I think that is just an enormous bonus to having Tim Walz on the ticket.
Yeah, that is a beautiful and unexpected twist that, most of us were just paying attention to who's the pick going to be, not the potential consequences of making that pick, right? But Brian, I want to shift a little bit to the process here. How do we get here? And just, echo some of what Norm said. I didn't care. I mean, honestly, I didn't say because my opinion about it is irrelevant ahead of the fact, but I actually was rooting for Tim Walz for all of the reasons Norm said. I also thought he had fewer downsides than some of the other. Also, he doesn't put anything at risk in terms of Senate seats and potentially having crazy lieutenant governors take over a state like in North Carolina. But it was an embarrassment of riches. And again, just a reminder that the Democratic bench is so deep. So talk a little bit about what that process was like and how we got here.
Well, the process, you're looking at 6 states, basically, that Harris had to look at, the swing states: Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And of the people that were most likely to be the vice presidential candidate, Cooper took himself out from North Carolina. Buttigieg was never a serious consideration. There are those who want him for Secretary of State and believe he's far better institutionalized in the cabinet somewhere. So that was the decision that led to that. No matter, also, he didn't fare well in those swing states. She had to find someone that would play to the strengths that they needed in the swing states, where she didn't. And look, of those swing states, she puts Georgia back on the map for the Democrats, as well as North Carolina. 2 people from the West, Mark Kelly was an early favorite, but Arizona and Nevada don't have the what she really needs, of the electoral votes, and 2 Western candidates wasn't going to do it. Andy Beshear was considered one of the finalists, and Andy was, I think I told you guys, a great choice. He hit all the buttons that they needed in those swing states, but he's far better in Kentucky, a future star in the Democratic Party who could take out Mitch McConnell or take that seat. The Democrats haven't owned that seat since 1984. Wendell Ford was the last one to have that, and he was a New Deal Democrat. So the Democrats would love to get back a Senate seat in Kentucky. He's the best choice to do that. So then you're left with with Shapiro, who did not fare well in those states either, in those swing states. So it was Walz. I mean, what he brings to this is what the Democrats desperately need. If you look at the electoral map, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. He's strong in all of those states. There is no path for victory for the Democrats that does not include those states. So even if Donald Trump gets all the states that currently are now tilted red, he ends up with 268 electoral votes. If she gets those 3 swing states, it's 270 for her. She wins.
And now, Brian, I mean, just the fact that it's not Shapiro. He's still governor of Pennsylvania. As governor, he
and
can
helps
still
bring
help deliver.
Pennsylvania
Yeah,
in. Yeah.
of course.
So that's it. It makes, when you look at it logically, this, what I like about this decision more than anything else, I've been the one that's been questioning the pragmatism of the Democrats from the very beginning. It's nice that they're excited, but pragmatically, how are they going to win the presidency? This was a very methodical choice. This was a very well-reasoned choice. And this is a choice that, I mean, come on, J.D. Vance, let's see these two debate. My God in heaven.
Me laugh.
I mean, I'll, as I've said before, J.D. Vance reminds me of every criminal I ever chased on America's Most Wanted. He even looks like it in his mugshots.
Actually, that's what Mercedes said earlier. He looks like a police sketch.
Yeah, he is. I also wanted, in connection with the robbery, that's the guy. Went on an 8-state crime spree and came back with a changed name, doesn't know who he is. So Walz actually is probably, I looked at him, I didn't know him real well. He's 3 years younger than I am. I thought he was at least 10 years older.
He's a year older than Kamala Harris. It's actually... Yeah. It's and I'm gonna shift gears a little bit, but Jen, what I find great about him is that, I mean, so many things. Like, it's hard to know where to start and where to end the list of positives, and I can't find a negative. He makes it seem like he just looks older, right? So he sort of brings what many Americans apparently think is a requirement on presidential tickets, at least for Democrats. Sort of white man, elder statesman gravitas or whatever. And yet, he's got this very progressive record, and he's totally willing to get down and scrap. And I don't see any downsides here. Am I like completely deluding myself? But the other thing too is I heard that one of Kamala Harris's advisor said that she was looking for somebody with executive experience. She was not looking to check electoral boxes, and that's the way it should be.
Mary, I completely agree with you. There is no downside. And I do see some Republicans trying, and some journalists trying to stir up some trouble, suggesting that choosing Tim Walz was an anti-Semitic move. That is just a joke. And whenever I see that, I am calling people out on that. And it's just nonsensical. And I just want to emphasize, as you know, I grew up in Michigan and I have moved back home. And, a lot of journalists have only lived or reported from New York or DC, and they've never lived in any other part of the country. And what they don't understand about Walz is he's a brilliant communicator, and he knows how to speak about policy in a way that never uses the word policy. It's hard to explain exactly what I mean, but I don't think he loses Pennsylvania, and I think he wins all kinds of states because he's a guy, I mean, look at him. He brings warmth. He was a football coach, for God's sake. That's the religion of the Midwest. He's the right religion. And he has a sort of government should leave us alone when it's none of their business, but also provide the stuff that the private market fails to provide, right? And so this idea, instead of saying my policy is to lift children out of poverty, he says, kids can learn when they have their bellies are full. That's why we're doing free breakfast. Someone who can speak that way is what is needed. And also,
just really quickly, Jen, a football coach who helped lead the school's first gay-straight alliance.
Right. The same year the team won some sort of state championship. And did I mention he was also in Congress and a governor? What also
and a defensive coordinator, which I really like. Sorry, as a defensive coordinator in football, I'm digging that guy.
Also, and as someone who, I did leave the Midwest and gathered all these Ivy League degrees because I thought that was what was important at the time when I was growing up. And, not everybody lives in the Amtrak corridor. And Josh Shapiro is a great guy, but he comes across as one of these, well-groomed, slick smarty pants from the East Coast.
Slick is the word. Yeah.
And, and I, by the way, sometimes come across that way to my friends back home. They're like, why does she talk that way? Like, why am I but what I mean is I think he's a unity candidate. And the fact that both Joe Manchin and AOC are supporting him tells you that in 6 weeks, since the debate was around 6 weeks ago, it's been 16 days since Joe Biden made the choice to stand down. And thanks to him and Kamala Harris, we have a Democratic Party in array. And so, as you know, I would have supported anything she chose because I understand she gets how this works. And yet, I am so happy this was her choice. I almost broke down in tears because I remember how I felt on June 27th in the spin room, and I know how I feel now. And it's not just hope. It's like, wow, maybe we're doing this right. Maybe we can move forward. And, anyway, I'm sort of in both an emotional place and a sort of like, let's go out and fucking win this thing.
Yeah, I mean, it could be both at the same time. And Waj, let's just think about that for a second. There's been speculation about who Kamala Harris's VP pick will be for days, literally days, because she's only been the candidate for days. Like, it's just amazing that the way everything has fallen into place. I say that as if it weren't purposeful and didn't take an enormous amount of work. But that's how they made it. That's how they've made it look. But I want to get to what I think is one of my favorite aspects of this. It is going to knock the Trump-Vance campaign even further back on its heels. They are flailing already. They're going to flail even more. As Brian just pointed out in the private chat, the MAGA people are billing Walz as a guy who wants to allow felons to vote. And they, that would mean that Donald will be able to vote for his ticket. So, like, what's so bad about that?
Him.
Yeah. But seriously, like, what do you anticipate the reaction and the response will be? And then after that, I kind of want to pivot to what we all need to be keeping track of and be aware of, because this is going to get incredibly nasty as they continue to flail and flounder and fail.
The fact that they're having a meltdown is a sign that she chose wisely. The
Absolutely.
fact that they're freaking out is a sign that Kamala Harris, in 2 weeks, let's give credit where credit's due, has run an airtight ship, efficient, clean, no leaks, running on enthusiasm, with the ear to the ground, listening to the people, building momentum. Within 2 weeks, she has created the type of energy that it takes a campaign to create in 2 years, folks. With the Tim Walz pick, you have a football coach, you have a hunter whom the NRA hates, you have a teacher who wants to feed children, you have a governor of a state that is happy, a state that is pro-business. You have someone who has, as mentioned, the respect and validation of Joe Manchin to Bernie Sanders and AOC, with Nancy Pelosi, the kingmaker, in the middle, coming in and giving her whispers. I say the following, and what I've been saying for the past 2 weeks, ever since Kamala Harris took over, if you will, if the baton was handed on to her. To answer your question, who cares what the Republicans think? Go on offense 24/7.
Oh, that wasn't my question. I don't care what they think.
I'm saying how Republicans respond. Go on offense. Go on offense 24/7 against the Tim Walz pick. I didn't answer your question. What was it? What was the question? How will Republicans respond, or how should?
Well, how does it totally? Well, you answer like, how does it torpedo their account? Their campaign.
Here's an example. Everything that they attack Tim Walz with, everything, and Brian gave a great example, right? It's all projection. Every single attack is projection. Now, look, someone mentioned this in our chat right now. I'm glad they did, because Jen said it. I just tweeted it. Tim Walz and his wife conceived thanks to the help of IVF. Who has decided to attack IVF this year? In addition of overturning Roe v. Wade, in addition to having a person as the VP candidate who is against no-fault divorce and keeps attacking childless women, the Republicans, each and everything that they attack Tim Walz with. This is what I was going with, Mary, in answer to your question, is I say you respond with offense. And the reason why I'm saying that is, historically, as we've talked about on the show, Democrats, they're always afraid, will it play to the middle? Is this too left? And another attack that's happening right now as we're speaking is Tim Walz is too far left. And then what I would say is feeding children. Is that too far left? Giving people paid leave. taxing corporations, being open to LGBTQ folks, being hated by the NRA, wanting responsible gun control, protecting women's rights. Is that too far left? And then now the Republicans are on the pivot. They're on the back foot. So I think this is a fantastic pick. It's America's prosecutor versus America's criminal, America's football coach versus America's weirdo. He's given off Wilford Brimley vibes. Everyone loves Wilford Brimley.
Not
Wilford
people
Brimley.
who knew him, actually, but
Hey, if we could do Toonses, we could do Wilford Brimley. If the children are Googling Toonses, you need to know Wilford Brimley, children. But as you know, as Jen said, as a Midwesterner, Jen's from the Midwest, this is why I was always on the Walz train, because in the past 2 weeks, and it seems like 2 years, he auditioned, Mary. He auditioned very well. He made the case where you can pitch and sell a progressive vision without the wonk. You could just cut straight through to the BS, talk to people, and when people listen to it, they're like, yeah, feeding kids. Our kids deserve lunches. People who are against it are hella weird. And the fact that she adopted his language and is cut through, I think this will be a fantastic pairing, a win for the Harris administration, and I think it's all systems go now. And then the last thing that's the only thing that's left, the booster fuel, DNC convention. So don't mess this up.
Well, then, I mean, that's the thing. I think at a most basic level, it's almost like Vice President Harris understands that America needs joy and kindness as an antidote to the creepy misery that Donald and JD Vance are peddling. And, also understands that people ignored Donald's VP pick because we're still freaked out about the fact that he almost got Mike Pence hanged, right? Whereas we can be completely joyful about our pick because we're riding this wave, and it's only like I've said this before. I don't believe we're in a honeymoon phase. I think this is it. This
come to America when we host the Los Angeles Olympics. And by the way, which I was president, we happened to get it. I was the president. I also got you a thing called the World Cup, which is coming very soon.
He didn't get it.
Yeah, good boy, Donald. And this is how they are going to respond to the cool of the Harris Walz campaign.
I'll tell you about TikTok. Trump is going to keep TikTok going.
Wow,
boys
Gen
can't
Z
dance.
totally in the tank for you now, Donald, standing next to a guy who peddles in toxic masculinity and is friends with Nick Fuentes and Andrew Tate. But
a white supremacist, Mary, a white supremacist who promotes hateful conspiracy theories. That's
I just made that clear by telling us who he's friends with. I mean, so Norm, this is obviously reason to be very positive. As Walz just pointed out, there are all of these high points that Democrats still are heading into: the Democratic convention, the debates, because either way, the debate, no matter what they agree to or don't agree to, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are going to win the debate, whether they're actually debating people or just have the stage to themselves, which I believe would be the arrangement. All of that having been said, however, we do need to be very careful here. We need to be happy and joyful and optimistic because we all deserve it after the 8 years we've suffered through, especially after the 3 weeks preceding Kamala Harris's becoming the nominee. But Donald, we've seen what happens when he thinks he's losing the competition for media attention. Last week, his solution to get more media attention was to be as racist as humanly possible in front of an audience of Black journalists while being interviewed by Black women journalists. So he's going to have to up the ante. He has nothing positive to offer. And now we hear JD Vance going out there and sort of like his puppet master, doubling down on accusations that Democrats were behind the shooting at Donald's rallies. So what do you anticipate, and how do we help prepare for that? Because in addition to that, we also have all of the voting issues in states where election deniers are trying to gain a stronghold.
So, Mary, first, I'm glad you brought up that last Vance point. What a vile excuse for a human being is J.D. Vance. This is basically fomenting violence by spreading a falsehood that he knows is a falsehood. And it's hard to have more contempt for a person than I have for J.D. Vance.
Norm, can I ask you a quick question?
There are others in the category.
I just have a quick question for you, because I'm very curious, because his rhetoric is very dangerous. This is stochastic terrorism. Shouldn't the FBI be paying this guy a visit?
Yes. The FBI should have paid a visit some time ago. The FBI has a number of people they ought to be visiting, but he should be right up there on that list. And of course, he should be banned from social media. But since he is a prominent figure on a medium whose owner, Elon Musk, is even more into fomenting violence and talking about the inevitability of a civil war, that probably is not going to happen. On the broader point, we should remember how we felt at this stage in 2016. It was a slam dunk. There was simply no question that Hillary Clinton was going to be the next president. We cannot rest on any laurels. We cannot be self-satisfied or think that just because things have moved in an incredibly strong direction and that you have even the unity of Joe Manchin and AOC, that this is a done deal. It is not. It's still likely to be very close because there is a core of support for Trump that will be there no matter what. And one other point I would make, I've just done a piece with former prosecutor Dennis Aftergut on the fact that Trump in his rally in Georgia mentioned and lauded by name 3 members of the Georgia Election Board, which is not a level of detail normally to be expected from Donald Trump. And we know that the Georgia Election Board, which is dominated by election-denying Republicans, is going to try to change the rules and the law in Georgia. In Virginia, the governor, Glenn Youngkin, who is a full-on Trumpist radical, has stacked the Virginia Board of Elections with his appointees. We still have to worry that if this is not a huge victory, if it's, say as close as it was in Biden's win in 2020, where the electoral vote margin was substantial, but the popular vote margin in these swing states was close, there will be an attempt to overturn the election. And we have to be cognizant of that, but we also have to keep the pedal to the metal for all of this. And let me just add, as a graduate of the University of Minnesota and the University of Michigan, as a Midwesterner myself, what I see in Tim Walz, and I'll come back to this, remember that John Fetterman had his stroke, looked like he was on the ropes against Dr. Oz, who defined weirdo before J.D. Vance and Donald Trump, and came through with a comfortable victory because people saw him as one of them, who came from their roots, who could speak to them, who would not back down, who was not a slick politician. And I think we have a winning ticket, but we cannot believe at any point that this is a done deal.
Nope. We need to act like we're running 5 points behind from now until the last vote is counted and the results are in. And Waj, I know you want to talk about this later, but I also want to represent my Northeast snobbery. As last I checked, New York was one of the original 13 colonies. When did we become not real America? Okay. All right. That's my.
And Kamala Harris is from the Bay Area, California.
Okay. So, the coastal people count for something too. Brian, go ahead.
I'm just from Kentucky.
Well, then you don't count at all.
I don't. Mary, all coasts matter. It's okay.
Yeah.
All right. Move along.
So speaking to Norm's couple of points, the Hillary convention, when Hillary was supposedly a shoo-in, there were problems in the Democratic Party in 2016 coming straight out of the convention. The Bernie bros weren't signing up for Hillary, and many of them said they would vote for Trump. Now it's 8 years later, and everyone knows what Donald Trump is about. As long as the Democrats come out of that convention unified, I don't think you're going to see the slippage among the far left or progressives that you saw in 2016. Because look, folks, you got a choice here, and we know what Donald Trump is. He's a known quantity, a convicted felon. You may not exactly like everything that Harris and Walz is for, but at least they're for the Constitution. So you got hope. So that,
and Brian, we can have a new fundraising group, middle-aged white Midwesterners for Kamala Harris.
So it's somewhere in time, So that, and then the election security that Norm spoke to is also key. Now the DOJ has already spoken. My sources there in the DOJ, they are on top of. I hope they're on top of it as well as they claim they are. As far as securing,
he just did it. Vance just did it again, so I'm not sure how on top of it.
Well, I'm specifically speaking to the election security for the election in November. That's all right. I mean, I know that Vance will have a lot to atone for probably after the election, but I don't think there'll be anything happen to him before then for fear of raising the specter of political interference and a weaponization of the DOJ. But as far as securing the election, there are people on the ground in a lot of these swing states with the DOJ. I know for a fact that they're trying to vet and make sure that that standards are adhered to. This is a very dangerous election. Norm is absolutely right. If it is close in some of these swing states, you can anticipate that we will be going through what we went through in the last election. The chances of violence, I think, are going to be a little less because most of the people that were involved in January 6th are now in prison. So that takes away, that core group of miscreants. But at the same time, the key for the Democrats and the key for this country, and make no mistake, this country died when John Roberts put a bullet in the head of the Constitution by saying that a president has, under their discretion, an official act, they have immunity. The only hopes of reviving this patient is to make sure that Donald Trump is not the president. So that aside, I think the DOJ is well aware of the stakes involved. I think the government institutions are well aware of the stakes involved. I hope they're more successful than the Secret Service was in Pennsylvania at the Donald Trump rally, and they don't let things slip through their hands. But I do know that there are mechanisms in place, and I do know that this is going to be a very well scrutinized and closely watched election, and hopefully that all of the complaints will be like last time: 60 times appealed in court, 60 times no evidence. It was bullshit then, and hopefully it'll be bullshit going forward.
Yeah, and we know now. We know what they planned. We know what they're planning, and I think this should be enough. This is what we're saving America from.
Good God.
I'll tell you about TikTok.
No, you know what, Donald? Don't tell us about TikTok because nobody cares what you think. You don't even know what TikTok is. Anyway,
he thinks that's his pacemaker.
Oh, just by the way, credit where credit is due. Donald just, sorry, this is hysterical. Donald just got us to 4,000 viewers live. Thank you so much, guys. You were just awesome, and your comments rock. So anyway, Waj, that's a cool little milestone. Norm, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to add, the pandering to TikTok is a part of this broader corruption. He now is for electric cars, having been opposed to them. Even though, he may change again now that Elon Musk has rescinded his offer of $45 million a month to the campaign. We know that he said to billionaires, you give me the money, I'll give you the tax breaks. He is breaking every rule. And while he's still in competition with Clarence Thomas for most corrupt person in public life right now, I'd say he has the edge, and he's going to do more things that are selling the presidency and selling the country down the drain.
Yeah, and Waj, now that miraculously the fact that we have the oldest candidate in American history is of no interest to the corporate media, do you think they want to pay attention to the people he keeps company with? The guy who gifted him a Cybertruck and a $300,000 Rolex in violation of probably many FEC regulations. Do you think they're going to care about the quid pro quos and the bribes? The $10 million Egyptian bribe that seems to have dropped like a stone to the bottom of a bottomless lake. Like, is there anything we can do to change that, or to get a spotlight on those things? Or do we just be the best campaign on the planet?
Both. I think it's clear that corporate media isn't built for this fight, and they're not made for this moment. They have failed, and the last 2 weeks is the sign of their failure. Once the Biden age thing went away, they floundered. They've been floundering to get some juice, right, to prove their neutrality. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that point, because every single day for the past couple of days, I have retweeted or tweeted a link to a bombshell report that if literally it was done against anybody else, it would be leading the news, where President Sisi, the president of Egypt, allegedly gave Donald $10 million, right, as he was running. And then the CEI investigated it, this illegal contribution of $10 million that Donald allegedly accepted and then used. And then Bill Barr, the attorney general, whom all of us on your show for years have said, please do not rehabilitate Bill Barr. And the same corporate media did what? Rehabilitated him, helped his book become a bestseller. And then lo and behold, we found out that Bill Barr said he will still support Donald in 2024. And Bill Barr killed the investigation. A foreign country giving $10 million bribe, buying off our future president, quid pro quo. And then also another big story that I think people should be following and asking themselves, why did Elon Musk spend billions of dollars on a money-losing enterprise called Twitter? Well, lo and behold, speaking about Michigan, I'm from California, but let me give my hat off to Michigan. Michigan right now is investigating, folks, Elon Musk's political action committee by the Michigan Secretary of State. They're investigating it right now, which is supporting Donald for massive violations. And also, Elon has helped re-platform the same white supremacists and conspiracy theorists who love Donald. In part, I know people aren't following this, but they should, by platforming people like Tommy Robinson, a white supremacist, a freaking thug. There are riots right now in England where right-wing thugs are chasing Muslims and black people, burning down libraries and attacking them, all linked to Elon Musk. I don't know, Mary. Maybe it's just me. But don't you think if these connections were tied to Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, it would be leading the news? Wouldn't that be important? I don't know.
Tied to anyone else, Watch. Tied to anyone else.
Anyone. And that is, again, something that we're going to spend the rest of our lives trying to figure out. Like, why? All of these carve-outs are just for one person who, by the way, is the worst person who ever lived. Jen, go ahead.
Yeah, and to add on to that, although I would like to have Michigan take all the credit, North Carolina is also investigating. And I would like to also, to note that the Secretary of State of Michigan is Jocelyn Benson, who was formerly the dean of the law school I'm joining, Wayne State University Law School. So anyway, yay, go team, go Warriors. But I am having like a flipping rage heart attack sitting here listening, because it's not just on Bill Barr. This is on Merrick Garland.
Yep.
And I have been on this from the beginning. Merrick Garland could have walked in and said, Donald Trump is a former president. I have been appointed by his opponent in the election, so I am not going to do any of the investigations of him that were handed to us in the Mueller report, or anything else involved in this insurrection that looks like it was a violent coup, and we're going to be looking into people and the connections. I'm going to appoint a special counsel. And then if he had done that, the special counsel could have been tasked with talking to every AG who was on investigating things, because I know that friends of ours just blame this guy. Is it Michael Sherwin or someone who they said didn't brief Merrick Garland? Well, excuse me, fuck that shit. If you made me in charge of something, it's not up to people to brief me. You go to them and tell them, I want all this information. They hand over their fucking files. Merrick Garland came in there thinking, oh, okay, I'll stop. You can read all the things I've written in the Washington Monthly about my concerns about him.
That's a great point, though. Where was the reporting on that? Wise said we floundered recently because of the talk of ageism. We've been floundering in the press for years. And
Well,
we
and let me-
never we were so glad to get Merrick Garland in. We just didn't even report anything on him after
Let me
he
add
got
one
in.
thing, though.
Hey,
Sorry, go ahead, Mary.
Just really quickly, I know that the argument a lot of the times is that, Donald Trump sells papers. Okay, fine. You think it wouldn't have sold papers if we knew that he took a $10 million bribe ahead of the
That takes more energy, though,
election?
Mary. That takes expertise, and we don't have that.
But I mean, really though,
No. The press would have covered it if Merrick Garland had gotten off his ass and done his fucking job.
But that's what I'm
Right.
But that's my point. Like,
Donald's
still,
a career, yeah.
That's still Donald news, right? If it has to be about Donald Trump, I don't understand why his being such a traitor and such a breathtaking criminal isn't going to get people to click on the friggin' link.
It's not new. The word news has the first three letters is new. And Donald, that's
It's
the
the
problem.
fact that Joe Biden is 80 news? No, because he was 4 years younger 4 years ago, which is it?
Yeah, there's absolutely an asymmetric treatment of Democratic candidates. But let me just add to the one last thing about this, which is, I don't know if Josh Shapiro, he seems pretty tough. He might be a good attorney general candidate. But I'm sure that she will vet people to actually do their job. We cannot have this happen again.
No, and I want to shift gears because we're getting close to 1:00. But Norm, what seems also to have been normalized in a way that I just think is utterly disgraceful is we have several sitting senators and dozens and dozens and dozens of people, Republicans in the House of Representatives, who are seditionists, who, as far as I know, have never been investigated. I mean, that seems to me a pretty terrible precedent to set, especially since I don't see anything on the horizon. That having been said, however, we have some other good news in a quadrant I wasn't anticipating. Judge Chutkan has been given the green light, and not only that, she's run with it. She's ready to go. She clearly has not been sitting around doing nothing. She's been waiting for this moment to get her trial, the January 6th trial, in which Donald Trump is the defendant, up and running. We're going to hear more within a week about that. And Justice Merchan in New York is ready to go ahead. Oh, here we go. With sentencing, Justice Merchan makes clear that he won't change the sentencing date in the wake of a recent flurry of Donald Trump's defense filings. Please note the court appearance scheduled for September 18, 2024 at 10 a.m. remains unchanged, he emphasized. So, Norm, that's good news. Let's start with New York first because it's potentially simpler.
Sure. One thing, just following what Jen said, Merrick Garland started by saying no one is above the law. And it's not just all those members of the House and Senate. And they seized a couple of phones. They have a lot of stuff on these guys. It's also Ginny Thomas. There are still plenty of Trump enablers, including in the legal profession. And I would go beyond Garland and the Justice Department to bar associations that have barely stepped up to the plate. How Bill Barr still has a license to practice law is just beyond me. Having said that and realizing that John Roberts has done more to shred the Constitution with voting rights, campaign finance, and now this egregious immunity decision, thank God we still have judges like Merchan and Chutkan who can make the best of a bad situation right now. I think that we are likely to see at least some recommendation from Merchan in the end for a jail sentence. He's not going to buy this idea that the prosecution was tainted because of the tiny share of evidence that came while Trump was president, not to mention that all of those actions he took were not a part of his official duties. They were all a part of a criminal enterprise. But also, Judge Chutkan now does have the opportunity to do a mini trial to introduce evidence that will show in a highly public way that Donald Trump incited an insurrection, a violent insurrection. And I hope will also put even more of a spotlight on the people who were most violent, who Donald Trump has said are hostages and ought to be pardoned. We need to get all of this out there in a way that is a supplement to the campaign that Harris and Walz will run, but that involves all of us as well. And I'm hoping, I've had this mantra for a long time. I want Joe Biden now to host a summit in the White House on the dangers and threats to American democracy. We've seen, as you look at what when he came up with his proposals on Supreme Court reform, proposals, by the way, that Neil Gorsuch appallingly basically threatened by saying, watch out, and not to mention going on Fox, which is a no-no. But it got attention in a way that, he'd set up a commission on Supreme Court reform that had recommended some of the same things that sank without a trace. The bully pulpit still works. The press has to cover what the president says and does. And if we, the Washington Post today had a front page story, half of Trump cabinet are opposed to him. Bring in all of those cabinet members, all of those generals, bring in Olivia Troy and others, and focus on the fact that Donald Trump is a clear and present danger to every core American value. There's stuff that we can do that will complement the campaign, that will make us feel better about the fact that we're still facing a close election.
Yeah. And Brian, Norm makes so many good points. And
I love
one
them.
of them is that it hasn't, and again, it's going to take lifetimes to figure this one out. For whatever reason, Donald Trump can break norms. He can break laws. He can be a traitor. He can say the most despicable things and do the most despicable things. He can be an adjudicated rapist, an adjudicated business fraud, and on and on and on. And yet, not only is nothing additive, any one of those things would be enough, but it's almost like they all cancel each other out. And I think one of the reasons, and I'm thankful that it's sort of got, stopped having as much prominence, but at the very beginning, the whole weird thing was effective because that resonates with people in a way. He's out to destroy democracy, maybe doesn't. So the idea that President Biden is now free to take up the bully pulpit, and now that Vice President Harris is going to have a much bigger one, they need to deploy that and and call for the kinds of actions Norm suggested, because those things make a splash. Just saying a laundry list of all the bad things he did, that's not going to work. So your thoughts?
Well, first of all, Donald Trump can break all the norms he wants. He ain't breaking Norm Ornstein. So that's one norm he can't break.
Never.
But to Norm's point, yeah, use the bully pulpit. They call it the dark brand, and I call it good cop, bad cop. Let Harris be out there going, well, these are wonderful, and we want to consider them. Getting it out in front of the public is just necessary on so many levels. I wrote a column. Here, I'll shameless plug for Reverse Shot. You'll see it this weekend and the show for your network, Mary. That I think at this point in time, we have to call for the breakup of media monopolies. This is one of the things that is this is one of the huge issues that just we don't talk about. And everything we've talked about today, everything that we always talk about is about educating the American voter and factual information that we no longer have because the media is operated by 6 companies that own 90% of what you see, read, or hear. He's long been an advocate of unions and busting up monopolies. Let him be the trust buster that busts up the media monopoly. That would be a historic undertaking, and he would make himself a hero to even many of the Trumpers, many of them who support the Jamie Raskin Press Act, which would be to allow us reporters to have our ability to have confidential sources without going to jail. They feel like they don't get their fair share. The left feels like they don't get their fair share. Everyone knows there's a problem with the press. Nobody knows what it is. I'm telling you what it is. Bring it to the attention. Norm's absolutely right about using that bully pulpit. Pick out 3 or 4 divisive, important issues. Bring them before the American public and get the conversation started. The Supreme Court was a great first act. What else do we need? At this point in time, what have you got to lose? This man has been a man of compassion and a man of passion for the Constitution for his entire life. He's dedicated his life to public service. I urge him to use these last few months bringing up the issues that we don't want to talk about or are afraid to talk about, including Donald Trump's criminality. It's not normal. It's worse than weird. He's a convicted felon. He needs to face retribution or justice for that. And we need to have a Justice Department we can trust. When you no longer believe the institute and no longer believe in the institutions fail. Why is that? The press. We are not trustworthy. We're the root of that evil. It's got to be rooted out.
And Walz, I know you have to go, so just last thoughts.
What everyone said is Joe Biden has nothing to lose. He has to go ham, as the millennials say. What he did with the Supreme Court was huge. His attacks on Donald Trump as a threat to democracy. And let me echo what Brian and Norm have said is the corporate media. No, we talk about it a lot, but again, I know everyone's focus is on America. Just take a minute right now and see what's happening in England. Those riots that I'm talking about, the fact that these thugs and hooligans are chasing after Muslims and immigrants and black people and burning down libraries, that is part and parcel of Rupert Murdoch's project. The long-scale demonization of immigrants. They've done like data in the UK, Daily Mail, all of his outlets, nonstop 10 years worth of gasoline pouring on this issue. And all it took was one person to light the flame, Mary. So I believe that, I know people think, you all are harping, but one of the biggest threats to our democracy, and I think something that will be studied, inshallah, in the future, was how disastrous Rupert Murdoch and Fox were to democracies and attacking democracies both here and in Europe. So Joe Biden has already done it with the Supreme Court. He's got to go ham against Donald Trump. I think he will even, get more respect and help Kamala Harris. And then if he could do this for the media, that'd be huge. And then finally, what he's done, if you really think about it, what he's done with the Supreme Court is he seeded the ground for Democrats, inshallah, once Kamala Harris win, to then talk about, wait for it, the filibuster.
Yeah,
he said it without saying it. It's an amazing tee up. So thank you all. I have to now be a masochist and take all these talking points and go against Piers Morgan and 3 obnoxious right wingers because I'm a masochist. Pray for me.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Be excited.
And you'll kick their ass, buddy.
Last thing I'll say is remember, joy and laughter is okay. Joy and laughter is necessary.
Yep.
We have earned catharsis, relief. We need this for the next 3 months. Enjoy it. Enjoy today.
Exactly. All right. Thanks, Walz. Jen?
Do you want me to endorse joy and catharsis?
I thought it was sort of went without saying, but please feel free to endorse those things. I mean, honestly, I think by endorsing that Harris-Walz ticket, you are endorsing those things. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've always been a little bit of a happy warrior type person. Mm-hmm. I mean, anyone who knows me, I have my moments. I get upset about things, but I laugh a lot and I smile a lot because I believe we get through stuff. And I do also believe that if you don't look around at the visual feast, it's summer, flowers are still in bloom. You look at Lake Michigan. No, I'm kidding. That's off of Chicago. But you look at the ocean, you see beautiful animals. We have the possibility to have joy. And that is the opposite of what Donald Trump and J.D. Vance are doing. I mean, the project of authoritarianism depends upon people being aggrieved, mm-hmm. people being angry, people feeling like something bad is going to happen and they have to stop it, as opposed to life is messy. We have to keep progressing, moving forward, making changes and improving. They're like very much burn it all down, or we're going to clamp down and control you. So
and hopelessness.
The
apocalyptic hopelessness of it all over there, which not the apocalyptic hopelessness, but the joy and the sense of possibility is our segue into our segment, In other news, Norm, you just came off a triumphant time with debate camp. That's Matthew Harris Ornstein's Washington Summer Institute, which is this was its 8th summer?
10th.
10th. My goodness gracious. That's incredible. So Norm, tell us about it. Tell us why you started it. And I want everybody to check it out. We're going to put links in the show notes. This is one of my favorite ideas, and the fact that it has been realized and is so successful. It gives me hope for our youth, have to say.
Thank you, Mary. You are a sweetheart. So my son Matthew died 10 years ago, and we did this camp because he was a national champion high school debater. And we talked to his best friend and debate partner, Alex Berger, about what to do. And, my son and Alex, who competed at the highest levels nationally, had gone to summer debate camps. Matthew for 2 summers at the University of Michigan, which is a premier camp, but it's costly. So we wanted to do something to bring kids who didn't have those resources into debate, because debate teaches life skills. Yeah. So we started with 30 kids. We're up to 200 plus from 6th grade, rising 6th graders. We even had a couple of 5th graders through high school. I will say one of the alumni came back. We do a big birthday party for Matthew, and Jenny's ice cream, which is not only delicious, but very generous, gives us big tubs of ice cream and cones and cups and everything to give to people. And a young lady who had been in the camp in 2017 and 2018 came back just to visit, and said, I'm finishing up on a full scholarship at Drexel University studying developmental economics. None of it would have happened if it weren't for debate. Alex came back to talk at our awards ceremony. And I'll just end with this. I say at this camp every year when we do our closing, I believe fervently in equal opportunity. There is nothing equal when some people start 25 yards behind the starting blocks and others are 25 yards ahead. And we're going to get you to the starting blocks, and then you can use whatever talents and drive you have. And I have to tell you, some of these kids, Title I kids, are brilliant. They thrive in this. And then you realize how many who are brilliant never have that opportunity. And if we can spread this and spread it in a way that actually, because these kids, it's one topic a year, policy debate. You often have to debate on the side of something that's anathema to you. You learn what other people believe. You have a better opportunity to counter it, and you do it all civilly. And it is a hope for our younger people. And I'll just end by saying we give out awards after the tournament. You should have heard these names spanning the globe, some very difficult for any of us to pronounce. Donald Trump's head would have exploded, as would J.D. Vance's, if they heard these names. These are kids from immigrant families who are our hope and our future. And it is the one thing that I do that really keeps me going.
Thank you, Norm. It is just the most wonderful thing. And I
all
cannot...
free to everybody with 2 meals every day. And, it's not cheap, but it's the way to go. And that's why I'll just say, when Tim Walz pushed for free breakfast and lunch for all kids, including ones who could well afford it, we do this, including plenty of kids who can well afford it. You don't want to start to draw lines or discriminate, because if everyone benefits, everyone benefits.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. And as I said to you earlier, I can't wait until this election is over so I can start helping out with organizations like this one, because it is the future. And we secure our future by investing in this way in children without prejudice, without any limitations. We feed them. We teach them, we nourish them, we encourage them. We do not put limits on them. So Norm, thank you for being such an extraordinary human being, for setting such an amazing example. We absolutely love you here and are grateful for everything you do. So on that note, what an episode, what a day. This is going to be wild. So we are here for you until the last vote is well beyond that too, because then after we win the election, we need to start making democracy better. So that's the next task. But let's win this one first. So Waj, Norm, Brian, Jen, thank you all. Mercedes, thank you for being here and helping make this one of the most amazing things I'm part of. And to all of you, of course, who watch us, support us, comment, you guys are amazing. As you know, we're on a mission to just get bigger and have greater reach. So if you haven't done already, please subscribe to the channel. I think we're over 75,000 subscribers now, which is really exciting. We're going for 100. That's our next goal. And let's do it as quickly as possible. It doesn't cost anything. If you click subscribe, it just means that you're going to be alerted every time new shows drop, which they do every day. And also like the episodes, share them with people you might think will be interested in what we have to say, because as you know, the Nerd Avengers rock, and we love giving you the real news as opposed to our corporate media competitors. Anyway, thanks again, everybody. Go Harris Walz. We are behind that ticket 100% of the way. We will see you here Thursday, 12 noon. In the meantime, please, everybody, stay safe and be kind.